This is the most overlooked and the most undervalued asset that you can have that will increase your earning potential, increase your revenue, increase your net worth. And if you are entrepreneurial, it will grow your reach. It will grow your audience like boatloads. Optimal health is not a privilege, it's a right. However, unfortunately, the overwhelming majority of health challenges today can be attributed to lifestyle. This includes our physical activity, the quality of our relationships, stress, purpose and fulfillment, and of course, our diet. But what if there was an alternative? What if we could prevent and combat these health challenges with lifestyle changes before pills and procedures? You are listening to the Plant Protocol podcast with yours truly, plant-based health and business coach, and now the forever voice in your head, Lisa A. Smith. It's time to come get this health. Hey, y'all. So you might want to get your pen and paper for this episode. I'm going to be teaching a lot today. And so I think it would really be helpful to make sure you have pen and pad so that you can take notes on today's episode, because I am going to break down for you how to increase your net worth and the amount of money you make with this one overlooked asset. And this one asset that I'm going to talk about today has literally generated hundreds of thousands of dollars at our company. It has added thousands of people to our ecosystem across social media, across our email lists. And it has also given us opportunities that are on track to generate even more growth financially, reach, branding. And so this one asset that I'm going to talk about today, I want you guys to have a pen and paper for. It is going to be a game changer. At least that's how I see it in my mind. You know how you think you're about to kill them with something and then it falls flat. That's not going to happen today. We're not going to talk about that today. In my mind, this episode is the one for you if you're interested in increasing your net worth, if you're interested in increasing your earning potential. And it's one of the most, in my opinion, undervalued and overlooked assets in the marketplace. Good morning. Look, shout out to my regulars. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to my Instagram channel. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Lisa A. Smith, plant-based health and business coach, owner of a coaching company where I do health coaching and business coaching. And today I'm in my business bag today. So if you, whether you're a 9-to-5er or you are an entrepreneur or you're a hybrid, you do both, this episode is especially important for you. I used to do a ton of business episodes. We've kind of gotten away from that and been doing a lot of personal development. Like last week, we were on here talking about chronic stress, but we're talking about business today. And so I want to share with you guys one of the most overlooked and undervalued assets that has the potential to increase your earning potential, has potential to increase your net worth, has the potential to give you limitless opportunities. All right. And so in this episode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to prevent you from leaving tons of opportunities on the table. I'm going to prevent you from leaving potentially a ton of money on the table. And I'm going to share with you how you can do that in a shorter time frame than it took for me to do it. Okay. Once I developed an understanding of the value of this asset. And so let's get into it, y'all. This one overlooked and undervalued asset, and no more cliffhangers, no more mystery. The asset that I'm referring to that we're about to spend the next 30 or so minutes talking about is intellectual property. Intellectual property. Now, when we think about assets, I don't know how it is for other communities or other individuals, but for me, historically, when I've thought about the word asset, I don't typically think about intellectual property. For me, typically, when I think about assets, we think about things like property that you might own. We think about things that you might own. We think about maybe stocks and investments that you have, right? We think about cash that you have on hand. We don't necessarily think about intellectual property, but I'm going to tell you what's completely changed for me. I think it was last year. I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about net worth and they were talking about calculating your net worth, right? And then this podcast episode, when they were teaching individuals how to calculate their net worth, they were giving the simple formula, right? And we know the simple formula for calculating your net worth is simply take your liabilities, subtract them from your assets, and whatever is left over is your net worth, right? And so, ideally, if you have $100 in assets, but you got $60 in liabilities, your net worth is $40, right? That's the simple math for calculating your net worth. Like, how many liabilities do you have? How much is your assets valued at? And you take the liabilities from the assets, right? But during this podcast episode, when they were teaching individuals how to calculate their net worth, they were going down a list of everything that can be considered an asset, right? And they were saying all the things we heard of, like if you own property, if you own land, if you own a business, that's an asset. What are all your investments looking like? Do you have a retirement account? That's an asset. Do you have insurance, right? That can be valued at something? That's an asset. Do you have all these things that essentially you can trade in for money, right? Do you have a stock investments? That's an asset. But then the host said something that was a game changer, right? Because of course I'm like, calculating everything in my mind. And then he was like, do you have any intellectual property, right? And I was like, do you have any intellectual property? He's like, if you have intellectual property, that's an asset. And never in my entire life had I calculated my intellectual property as an asset. Never, ever, when I was calculating, adding up, what do I have in savings? What do I have in retirement? What do I have in investment accounts? Like, what properties do I own? Of course, all of that triggers as assets for us. But when he said your intellectual property has value that can also be listed as an asset, it changed the game, because then my mind went to, well, shucks, how do I determine the value of my intellectual property? So the thing I want to talk about today, I'm going to break down 3 things for you today. Okay. I'm going to break down to you what is intellectual property. I'm going to break down to you why you should have intellectual property. And I'm going to break down to you how to create intellectual property. The most overlooked and undervalued asset that we all have the potential to own in limitless amounts is intellectual property. Most of us think maybe we don't own anything, we don't have anything to our name, maybe everything in our, on our list is all liabilities and not nearly enough assets. But you right now could be sitting on an asset that you are not labeling as an asset, or you can be sitting on a potential asset and you're not pulling the trigger on creating it. So let's get into it and talk about this intellectual property, because creating intellectual property at my coaching company has been the single most thing that has helped us, again, to generate hundreds of thousands of dollars. It has helped us to grow our audience exponentially across social media, across our email list, across our listenership on my podcast, right? And then it also, most importantly, has gotten us opportunities that we likely would not have otherwise gotten had I not created this IP. So let's start with the what, okay? Let's start with what. What is intellectual property? Just so we can be very clear, okay? So intellectual property, very simple definition. It is essentially your proprietary ideas that you've packaged into a format that people can consume. I'm going to say it again slowly. Intellectual property are your proprietary. That means they belong to you. They were created by you, right? You're not stealing nobody's stuff. Intellectual property is simply your proprietary ideas that you have taken the time to package into a format that people can consume. Now, let me give you some examples of some of the IP that I've created over the years, okay? I think one of the earliest, probably the oldest piece of IP that I own is a recipe book. I created a recipe book called The Plant-Based Foodie many years ago. I don't know, maybe 2017. I created a recipe book. That's intellectual property. I put recipes together, plant-based recipes. So proprietary ideas. So I created the recipes and I packaged them into a book that people can consume, right? So again, what is intellectual property? It is your proprietary ideas that you have done the due diligence to package into a format that people can easily consume. It is not IP if it's all still in your head. Okay. If it's all still in your head and then you're watching, you see a commercial or you're listening to a podcast and you hear somebody else talking about your idea, it was never yours. Okay. It is not IP if it's only in your head. IP is you've taken your ideas out of your mind and you've done the work of packaging them into a format that people can consume. So let's continue to go down the list. So I've created a recipe book. And I'm currently writing a new book. Now, my new book is a personal development book. It's all about radical obedience, right? So I'm currently creating a brand new piece of IP. But since the recipe book that I created in 2017, I've also created, I think the thing that I created the most and that has generated the most money is my curriculums. So in our coaching programs, we have 3 coaching programs. We have a plant-based coaching program, we have a business coaching program, and we have a personal development mastermind, right? In our programs, they are curriculum-based. So the thing that has generated the most income, that has, I would say, probably increased my net worth the most out of all my IP is hands down the curriculums that I've taken the time to create. What is IP? It is your ideas, your proprietary ideas that you have packaged into a format that other people can consume. So that means in our coaching programs, I don't just show up on every coaching call and talk from the top of my head. I've created a curriculum that all of our students can follow, right? So that they can consume my intellectual property without me having to be there. So I personally create programs that are curriculum based because that curriculum is my intellectual property. And I'm going to tell you a little later in today's episode why it is so invaluable to package it, right? So it's one thing to have all these super cool ideas and frameworks all in your mind, but packaging it in such a way that somebody else can consume is invaluable for multiple reasons. And I'm going to tell you those shortly, right? So I've created curriculums for our coaching program. Some people have coaching programs that they invite you to, and they are not curriculum based, right? You can be in a program where y'all just show up and y'all kind of just kick it. And it's helpful, but you don't have any process to refer back to, right? I don't create programs like that. I create curriculum based programs. So my curriculums are intellectual property. That means I've packaged a process. I took it out of my mind and I put it in a process that somebody else can follow. The other thing that I've created with regard to intellectual property that has generated money, that has increased our net worth, that has grown our audience at our company, are masterclasses. So several of you have been to one of my live masterclasses. I did one this week on chronic stress just a couple of days ago on September 25th. I taught a masterclass about chronic stress. That masterclass is intellectual property, because I had slides, I planned out the frameworks that I was going to teach, and it's recorded, right? So that means that I have taken my ideas. I was like, how do I want to teach chronic stress, right? How do I want to explain to our attendees? How do I want to explain to them how to combat chronic stress? I thought of that stuff on my own. Everything that I taught last Wednesday, I thought of on my own, and I recorded it. Now, what can I do with that piece of content? I can take that masterclass, and I've done this with multiple masterclasses over the last 9 years, and I've recorded it, and now I can reuse it over and over again. It is now a piece of intellectual property. And I will argue to say, based on the feedback that we got on that survey from that masterclass on Wednesday, I would argue to say that I could sell it. It was that good. So I gave the recording out for 24 hours. The recording is now no longer available until I decide it's going to be available again. And when I decide it's going to be available again, I can either give it away for free, or I can increase our revenue by selling it. Right? That masterclass is intellectual property because that's how good it was, right? Okay, so masterclasses, books, podcast episodes. Of course, this is a podcast episode. Many of you guys follow my podcast, the Plant Protocol podcast. All those episodes is considered intellectual property, right? But I'm going to tell you, there's like really good intellectual property that like you could really market and sell. And then there's pieces of IP that is best just given away. Okay, so we'll get into that in a second. So there are so many different forms of intellectual property, but the definition that I want you guys to understand it is that it is your proprietary ideas that you have packaged into a format for other people to consume. This is the most overlooked and the most undervalued asset that you can have that will increase your earning potential, increase your revenue, increase your net worth. And if you are entrepreneurial, it will grow your reach. It will grow your audience like boatloads. Okay. So that is the what is intellectual property. Let's get into why you should create intellectual property. So everybody, I don't care if you are an entrepreneur or if you are a 9-to-5er or if you are both a hybrid. Okay. You should have intellectual property because it's one of the easiest ways to supplement your 9-to-5 income. So why should we have IP? For one, for yourself. Now, for yourself is everything I just named. I want to increase my net worth. I want to increase my income. I want to increase my earning potential. So we should all have intellectual property for yourself. But now let's get into the most important reason we should all have intellectual property, which is for others. Okay, for others. Now, the other reason we should have, we create intellectual property is for one of three reasons, or maybe all three reasons. Okay. So you have intellectual property. Either there's three major categories. So this is why do we create intellectual property when we're doing it for others? Okay. Number one, to entertain. Number two, to motivate or inspire. Or number three, to educate. Okay. So all of us, I'm sure, love consuming funny content on social media. I know I do. I got some comedians that are like my go-to. When I want to laugh, when I want a good chuckle, I go to their pages and I consume their content. They make videos, they make skits, right? They give their perspective on things. And I think it's hilarious, right? And so that's their intellectual property. They're literally taking ideas they have about a skit, taking it out of their mind, and they're packaging it into a video, into a skit, into, an assessment, and they are giving it away to us for free online. So one reason we create intellectual property is to entertain. Okay. That's really not my lane. I'm not here to entertain y'all. This is serious business. Okay. That was my serious space. Okay. So one reason we create intellectual property is to entertain. The second reason we create intellectual property is to motivate or inspire. So this is, for example, if you write a book, maybe telling your life story, maybe you've had like a wild life, right? Like with some crazy stories, or you had something extraordinary happen to you and you want to help other people who are in similar situations, or you want to help people avoid what you went through. And so the second reason you create intellectual property is to motivate or inspire, right? And this is cool. You want to tell your story. You want to help other people. You want to, bring attention to something that's not as talked about, maybe in your opinion. Like, for example, I did a challenge a couple months ago, and I remember I had a VIP ticket to the challenge. And so they were doing Q&A. And during the Q&A, this young lady, she raised her hand to ask a question about her intellectual property. She had a book, and she had written a book about the fact that she was trafficked. Right. So she was a victim of trafficking, and she had wrote this book about it, and she was asking questions about how to leverage the book. Right. That's an example of a piece of intellectual property that's designed to motivate or inspire. Right. You want to tell your story about something extraordinary, or you want to help somebody that's going through a similar situation. Or in her case, she wanted to warn parents about just the dangers of trafficking and just what to be aware of, right, in her book, right? So that's a piece of content that's designed to motivate or inspire, And then finally, and this is my lane, you create IP to educate. You create IP to educate. Now, that's what I do best, right? So what you guys are watching me do right now, hearing me talk and teach about the importance of everybody having intellectual property. This is me teaching. This is the easiest type of IP for me to create, right? And so the point of having educational IP is to solve a problem for somebody, right? So all IP is not created equal. You may create IP to entertain, and that's just to make us laugh, make everybody feel good, whatever. And entertainment, as you guys know, makes millions upon millions of dollars. So if you want to create IP for entertainment, please do. Right. That this is just like, you might be a musician, you might be a comedian, you might be a dancer. Like, you want to create IP to entertain. It's a ton of money in that. You might want to create IP to motivate and inspire, right? That's what my coach does. Dr. Eric Thomas, he's a motivational speaker, and he creates intellectual property to motivate us to move in the direction of our goals, right? Or you might be like me and you want to create intellectual property to educate. That's what I do best. Like, I'm the queen of frameworks. My moniker is the wordsmith. Like, I'm sweet with words. I can put lessons together. I can put frameworks together. I could take something that's traditionally difficult to understand, and I can break it down and use examples and storytelling and frameworks to make it simpler to understand and comprehend. That's what I'm sweet at, right? And so I create intellectual property to educate. So that's why we create intellectual property. That's what intellectual property is. Let's get into the final piece for today, which is how. Okay. Now, this is the part I want y'all to take notes on. Okay. How do I create intellectual property to increase my net worth, and to increase my earning potential, to increase revenue if I'm a business owner? Okay. The very first thing you have to do to create really good intellectual property, okay, is you have to make an observation. You have to make an observation. So let me say this about creating intellectual property, all right? Because it's not as simple as just sitting down and cutting the camera on. It's not as simple as just sitting down and cutting the mic on. It's not as simple as just sitting down and writing whatever comes to you. The best and the highest quality intellectual property is intentional, meaning you have thought about it. There's some premeditated thought in that thing, okay? That means that you have sat down and you have made an observation about something in the world. You make an observation. And when you make an observation, step number two, this is the most important step that you can never skip, because this is the difference between great intellectual property and crappy intellectual property. Step one, make an observation. Step two, assess your experience. The best intellectual property is built on experience. The best intellectual property is built on experience. And so let me give you a few examples. In my business coaching program, I help aspiring coaches create a coaching business. Okay. Now, the reason, number one, that I feel so confident in being able to do that is because I've done it. Okay. So I've created a curriculum for building your own coaching business because I've done it. Now, remember, step one was make an observation. The observation that I noticed in my lane when it comes to plant-based nutrition was that none of the other plant-based certifications, number one, included enough business acumen for people to be successful. And number two, none of them were formed by people of color. So my observation was Black people are the fastest growing demographic of vegans in the US. We are interested in going plant-based. We want to learn more about taking animal products out of our diet. But number one, there aren't enough coaches that look like us. So I need to create the coaches. I need to create a certification. And then when it comes to creating a certification, I noticed there wasn't a plant-based coaching certification that was founded by a person of color, which meant all these Black vegans and all these Black plant-based people who were interested in actually coaching other individuals had to go to communities and had to learn from people that didn't look like them and didn't have the same nuances in their experiences. I made an observation. So my observation wasn't that the world needed another plant-based certification. There's plenty of them out there. My observation was like, there's not one that's servicing this unique population that has this unique circumstance, right? And so I made an observation. And then number two, I assessed my experience. I was like, it doesn't exist. And I have years of experience of creating it. Like, I have years of experience of being a successful health coach. And so the very next thing you must do after making that, because you can make an observation, but have no experience in that lane, don't have any receipts in that lane. And so if you do create a piece of intellectual property around it, it'll be a theoretical thing. Let me give you an example of that. I remember years ago, this guy It wasn't even years ago. It was like last year. I just be lying. Like last year, this guy slid in my DMs and he was like, I need help. I'm a plant-based coach and I want help like getting clients and making money as a plant-based coach. And I was like, bet. And I was like, well, the first step that I teach in creating a successful coaching company is you need to specialize, right? And he was like, yep, okay. And I said, what's your specialty? I'm like, what do you specialize in as a health coach, as a plant-based health coach, right? You can't be generic. You need to be specialized. And he's like, well, I help people lose weight. I was like, bet, that's perfect. That's a great specialty. It's well needed. Plenty of people are interested in weight loss, right? And so the next thing I asked him was, tell me your weight loss story. He was like, oh, I ain't never been overweight. I said, excuse me, say what? He's like, oh yeah, no, I ain't never been overweight. I just selected that because I know a lot of people are and they need that. I was like, what? So you're helping people do something you've never done. Now, suffice to say, people go plant-based and if they do it in a healthy manner, they're going to lose weight, right? So, I mean, his potential for getting results is pretty high, but not as high as they could be if he had the receipt himself. Right. So there's intellectual property that you can create it can move the needle, but it really moves the needle when you build intellectual property based off your personal experience and your personal receipts. Changes the game, right? So the reason I teach people how to establish and grow a health coaching business is because that's exactly what I've done. Right? The reason I teach people how to adapt a whole food plant-based lifestyle to optimize their health is because that's exactly what I've done. My curriculums are based on my experience. The best intellectual property is based on receipts. The foundation of really great IP is receipts. I have receipts for what I am about to package. Okay. So step one, make an observation. What's missing, what's needed, what's not as available and accessible, right? So make an observation. That's number one. Step two, assess your experience, right? IP should not be based on theory. It should not be based on hypothesis. If you're going to create intellectual property, if you're going to take ideas out of your mind and put them into a package that other people can consume, you want to have receipts, because the last thing you want to do is lead somebody astray or give somebody information that may or may not work. If you don't have receipts that it has worked and it has worked ideally for you, I would not create that IP. Okay. Now, can you create IP without receipts? Absolutely, you can. Here's the caveat. It's going to be harder because it's going to take longer and it's going to require more people. Okay. And the more people that your ideas require in order for you to create them, the more challenging it's going to be to create that thing. So it's much easier to create intellectual property that's going to increase your net worth, that's going to increase your earning potential based on personal experience and personal receipts. So don't try and jump into a lane that you've never been in and come over here and try and create something for us to consume. And it's all theoretical. Okay. It should not be theoretical. All right. Just stay in your lane. Okay. So that's number two, assess your experience. Here's the final step in creating really good intellectual property. The final step in creating really good intellectual property. This is the difference between like taking a book or taking a podcast episode or taking a masterclass from good to great. This is because you could do just step one and step two, like make an observation and then assess your experience. And then the next thing will just be to decide how you want to package it, right? Before I give you the bonus number 3, you got to then decide how do you want to package it. Am I sweet at writing? Am I sweet at speaking? Am I sweet at connecting dots? Then you want to create curriculums. Like, can I put together a linear process for somebody to follow? Create a curriculum for it and put that curriculum in a course, put that curriculum in a coaching program. If you're sweet at writing, you want to just maybe put that IP in a book. If you're sweet at speaking, then you might want to put that IP on a podcast, or you might want to market yourself as a speaker and put that IP on stages. Okay. So what is your talent? How do you, in the most effective way, deliver information? What are you the most confident in with regard to delivery, and package that? Package the IP, because there's a ton of ways you can package intellectual property. You have a ton of avenues to choose from, right? So you got to decide once you have made an observation, after you have assessed your experience and looked at your receipts, what do I have receipts? Meaning I have gotten a result from doing something. Then you decide how you want to package it, right? But then here's the extra sauce that I'm about to give you, okay? And this is what takes intellectual property from good to great. And now, a word from our sponsor. Oh, wait, that's me. I'm the sponsor. This episode is being brought to you by the Plant Protocol's 30-day salt, oil, and sugar-free vegan challenge. Weight loss, stabilized blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol, mental clarity, increased exercise, healthy relationship with food, sugar and fast food addictions eradicated. Those are just some of the results our challengers got during our last challenge, and it's going to be even better next time. If you want to experience the power of plants, if you want to learn more about what is plant-based lifestyle, and you need to do that in community with experienced coaches, with live interactive classes, say less. This challenge is for you. It only takes a minute to click the link in the show notes to get registered. Go tell 3 of your friends to tell 3 of their friends that it's time to come get this health. Get this transformation. Get registered. We're kicking off prep month on December 1st. The challenge officially begins January 1st. And from now until then, we'll be dripping masterclasses and content and recipes to you to get your mind and your body ready for a phenomenal transformation. It's time to come get this health. Now back to the show. This is what takes intellectual property from good to great. The best intellectual property solves a problem with a framework that you've created. So let me give you an example. So I can come on here and I can tell you guys how to create content on social media to grow your audience and to convert people and get them into your coaching programs, like get them to sign up for a discovery call with you or fill out your application, whatever, right? But there's nothing like me coming on here and saying, let me teach you the best method from converting an online audience to paid clients. The best method, BEST, is a framework that I created. It's an acronym. It's a framework that I created that teaches you how to take online followers and convert them to paid clients in your programs. The best method. The best intellectual property has a framework built into it that somebody can extract and follow. Like, it's one thing to come on here every week and just give you a tip on how to do it. It's another thing to package it into a process called a framework. Let me tell you why. Frameworks are invaluable because it sells itself without you always having to be there. It's invaluable because it sells itself without you having to always be there. So I remember when I taught my best method, I spoke, was it last year or the year before? I spoke at the Small Business Expo in Detroit. The name of my presentation at the Small Business Expo was the best method for converting an online audience into paid clients, right? And I went through the best method, a 4-step framework that I created out of my mind. I looked at how I did it, and I sat down and I created a step-by-step process for that. That is so invaluable because here's what you want. When you are competing in the marketplace, when you are competing with other people that do what you do, when you are competing with other companies that do what you do, when you are competing for stages for others with other speakers who speak like you speak, the thing that helps you stand out the most is when you can leverage a framework and intellectual property that they cannot get from the other speakers, from the other companies, from the competition. If me and 4 other people are being looked at for some keynote address at some big university, for example, if I come in and say, well, I'm going to teach your graduates the best method for going from new graduate to a 6-figure earner within the first year of their career, that is going to give me more leverage than the other speakers who are all just saying, I'm the best because I'm good at speaking. When you take intellectual property and you include a framework that you've created that they can't get anywhere else, it changes the game on your marketability, on the money that you can earn, and most importantly, how much money you can earn over time without doing more work. See, if I just did masterclasses every month, but I didn't have a process, that means in order to keep making money, I would have to continue to do brand new masterclasses with brand new content. But if I have frameworks that I've created, like I have so many frameworks. So I have something that I teach my students called the trifecta of transformation. This is the 3 things that somebody needs to be ready to change, right? The trifecta of transformation. I have the best method for converting people from an online audience to paid clients. We have the query method of coaching. So I've created my own form of coaching, right? So when people come into my business accelerator to grow their coaching business, I teach them the query method. All of those are frameworks. That is the best intellectual property because number 1, you can sell it. And if it's really good, it will sell itself. So then people don't want Lisa anymore. They want the best method, right? People don't necessarily need Lisa anymore. They want the trifecta of transformation, right? How can you take your intellectual property and put it into a process that other people can follow? Because number 1, that way you can slowly, when you're ready, step away from your business and take some time out without you having to be the magic. Okay. So you don't have to be the magic all the time. And then step 2, you have something that people cannot get anywhere else. So when you are throwing your pitch or when you are throwing your proposal into the hat, because there's an opportunity that you're vying for, maybe somebody's giving away funding, maybe somebody's giving away a year of coaching and mentorship, and you have to pitch yourself for the opportunity, you want to have something to leverage. Right. So having an intellectual property that includes a proprietary framework that you've created is one of the most invaluable pieces of intellectual property that you can own because they literally cannot get the best method from anywhere else. They cannot get the trifecta of transformation from anywhere else. They cannot get the query compassionate coaching model from anywhere else. Right? When people say, Lisa, I see you develop coaches and you help people grow a coaching business. How do you do that? I'm like, oh, I have an entire curriculum that I created. It's a 3-phase curriculum. Phase 1 is mastery. Phase 2 is integrity. Phase 3 is confidence and coaching. We have a 3-phase curriculum that I can bring into your company and I can teach your future coaches how to have a successful coaching business. That is invaluable. That is invaluable. So everybody, one of the most overlooked, underutilized assets that you can create for yourself to increase your personal net worth, to increase the net worth of your company, to increase your revenue, to increase your reach, to increase your audience is you need to have intellectual property. That means you have taken ideas out of your head, you have packaged them into a format that other people can easily consume, a book, a blog, a curriculum, podcast episodes, master classes. If you're in the entertainment, this is going to be songs. These are going to be videos. These are going to be skits. You might write a movie. That's all intellectual property. It is invaluable. But if you're in the education lane like me, not only do you need that, you want to make sure as often as possible that you are creating signature frameworks to go along with them. Wednesday night, when I taught my masterclass about chronic stress, I taught them 2 frameworks that I had just created. I was like, look, I want to break something down for you guys. And I broke down what happens when you're not radically obedient in your life. Then I broke down the 3 stages that somebody might be in if they are suffering from chronic stress. I was like, stage 1, you are overwhelmed with no strategy. Stage 2, you have a strategy, but you're not executing. Stage 3, you're executing, but you're still overwhelmed. I had a 3-stage framework for people to use as kind of a measuring stick for where they need to start with getting out of chronic stress. That is a framework. I can take that short framework that I created and I thought of it in my mind, like God gave it to me, divine download. I didn't take it from anywhere. I didn't hear anybody else talk about it. It was all me. I was like, if you're in stage 1, your problem is decision making. I said, if you're in stage 2, your problem is your belief systems. I said, if you're in stage 3, your problem is your faith muscle. And everybody was like, oh, got it. I'm stage 1. I'm stage 2. I'm stage 3. The reaction that I got from that audience when I taught that framework on Wednesday night was so good. It was validation for me that I can take that, package it, sell it, reuse it again and again, get sweeter and sweeter at teaching it, and it can generate money forever. Forever. And I want you guys to think about how many other people's frameworks you use on a regular basis. I know me, I reference, for example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs all the time. Maslow been dead longer than I've probably been alive. But I reference his framework, his intellectual property, the hierarchy of needs, all the time. This is exactly what your intellectual property can do for you. Take these ideas out of your head, put them down and put them in a format in which other people can consume them. And here's the thing, guys. You cannot be afraid to share them and teach from them over and over again. See, part of what gets in people's way is their limiting beliefs. Oh my God, I'm not qualified. Oh my God, I'm not good enough. I don't sound good. The reason you don't sound good, the reason it doesn't make sense, the reason your ideas are not connecting in your head is because you're not teaching it. You have to be crappy before you can be good. So take the ideas out, put them down, decide how you're going to deliver it. Are you going to write a book? How are you going to package it? Are you going to create a digital course? Are you going to create a live coaching program? That's my jam. Are you going to do masterclasses where you can vet your frameworks? Like that framework that I taught Wednesday night about chronic stress a couple of days ago was my very first time teaching that 3-stage framework. That was my very first time teaching it. The response was so good. I was like, okay, I got a really good response when I taught this. So that tells me, number one, that I have something here. Okay. So I have something here. It resonated with people. People didn't ask me. Not a single person asked me a question about the framework. I was like, got it. It was super easy to understand. It was no confusion. Right. So it was consumable. It was comprehensible, right? It was easy to understand, and everybody was able to put themselves in the framework. I told them on the Zoom, I said, put in the chat, are you 1, are you 2, or are you 3? Here are the 3 stages that you might be at if you're chronically stressed. Are you 1, are you 2, or are you 3? And at the end, when we were doing Q&A, they were all telling me, yep, Lisa, I'm number 2 because I got belief issues. Lisa, I'm number 3. I got faith issues. They were very clear when they left that masterclass what problem they now need to go out and solve. Your intellectual property should solve a problem based on an observation. Listen, I observed how much chronic stress is killing people. I personally have an experience and a history with chronic stress. I have receipts. And so I was able to tell people exactly how you get out from under chronic stress. And here's what you need to go do. Now I have, as a result of me talking about chronic stress for months now, we have grown our email list by hundreds of people. We have gotten hundreds of people signed up for our challenge that we're doing, right? I can literally tangibly touch the numbers that have increased. We have enrolled people in programs based off of this intellectual property. I can tangibly touch the results. I can look at a spreadsheet and touch the results of what me creating really good intellectual property has produced. And that's the same thing it can do for you. And it does not matter whether or not you are an entrepreneur or a 9-to-5er. You can do this as a 9-to-5er. Like you can still work a job. I am not inviting everybody to quit their job and think that the only way intellectual property matters is if you have a business. You don't have to have a business. You can easily have a 9-to-5 and still be writing a book. You can easily have a 9-to-5 and still be recording a podcast. You can easily have a 9-to-5 and decide you want to create a digital course to help people get out of debt. Maybe in your 9-to-5, that's what you do. That's the best place to start when deciding what you're going to package. What do you already do? Even if you do it for somebody else, for another company, what are you sweet at? Like if you work in HR and you know what kills or seals the deal when it comes to getting hired, you can package that into a process, right? Here's the 10 steps from being an applicant to fully employed with your ideal salary. Because I've been working in HR for 15 years. You can package that in something. Package it into a digital course, package it into a book, package it into a digital download. It ain't got to be a whole book. Maybe a book take too long and you need to make money next month. Package it into a digital download. What do you already know? What do you already have receipts for? What are the observations you're making, right? You might notice, because you've been in HR for 10 years, that men versus women show up different when they're trying to be employed. So you might make a 10-step best practice list for women who are trying to go from applicant to employed with their ideal salary. You might notice, and the data actually shows this, that men are willing to negotiate their salary, whereas women only take what they've been offered, right? And that's really true, right? That's one of the reasons they make more than us. Like, we just don't ask for more, right? And so you might work in HR and be like, boom, I've made an observation on my job. After 10 years, I think women can do a better job at negotiating. I think women can show up differently in these spaces. They're educated, they're overqualified, but they lack confidence. Okay, got it. I'm about to give them a playbook. Just call it the playbook, right? If you are a woman between this age and you're trying to get into management, or if you're trying to get into C-suite, or if you're trying to get into whatever, this is how you do it. Create a playbook, create a framework. And guess what? You can take that framework. It might start off as a book. No, it might start off as a digital download. And that digital download can turn into a book. That digital download can turn into a signature keynote that you're hired to deliver. That digital download can turn into a digital course. That digital download can turn into a coaching program. Intellectual property can increase your net worth like nothing you've ever seen. Y'all think is consistent investment in the stock market. You think it's owning property. Yeah, all of those are great assets, but sometimes those great assets take a while to produce. Those are mostly for long plays, right? You invest in something, typically there's a long play before you see a return on that investment. The turnaround, so it takes more to get started, and then the turnaround may be a little slower. Intellectual property though, shoot. You can have that thing off the ground. Like, before I go live again next Monday, your intellectual property can be producing results for you. Like, you can be marked, like the next pitch you do for yourself, if you want to speak on somebody's stage, or if you want somebody to work with you, like, if I'm selling my coaching program, I'm like, oh, the reason you should come work with us is you're going to get my proprietary method that you can't get anywhere else for developing a successful coaching business. The reason you should come into our coaching programs is because I'm going to teach you the signature way that we adopt a whole food plant-based lifestyle that's different from all the other plant-based coaching programs out there. Like, the reason you should work with me one-on-one, like, I have a method that I teach our students who are dealing with like confidence issues and personal development issues, right? And it's called the LCA method. When I tell you I have so many frameworks, it's called the LCA method. And so when people want to book a VIP day with me or a one-on-one with me, I'm like, yo, the reason you want to do a VIP day with me is because I'm going to walk you through our LCA method for overcoming your limiting beliefs. It's called Lights Create Action. I'm going to walk you through our LCA method. That's all intellectual property. So if you just want somebody to listen to you and hear you out, yeah, you can go to any coach. But if you want the LCA method that has helped hundreds of people before you get over this problem that you have, then you need to come to Lisa, right? And so make yourself commit to developing intellectual property. It is the one overlooked and underutilized asset that can truly change the game for you. So one of the things we teach our students inside of my business accelerator is specifically how to create intellectual property. Like, I created something called the Signature Coaching Program Blueprint, right? So I created an entire template for our students to follow to create their own IP, because that's how important intellectual property is. Because I could have, if I'm helping somebody create a coaching business, I could have just told them, like, select a specialization, create your offer, decide your pricing, here's how you establish content to attract people to your offer. But no. I want every single one of our clients that goes through our business accelerator to have intellectual property. So I took the time to sit down and create an entire blueprint on how to create a fire curriculum. It's called the Signature Program Blueprint. You can only get that inside of my business accelerator. Now, you can go to other business coaches and they can teach you how to create a business and create a coaching company. But will you walk away with your own signature program, your own intellectual property? I was reading the comments from one of our students just recently, And she's coming up at the end of her time with us, at the end of our program. And she literally just wrote in our portal, in our student portal, she was like, I feel so good having my own program. She was like, I meant to pull up the comment so I can read it to y'all, but she's like, it feels so good having my own program. And it really does. Shout out to Milan on Instagram, who just put her program name in the comments. She also is in our Business Accelerator. Well, Milan is a coach with us. And the name of her program is Rooted. She created Rooted in our Business Accelerator. She created her intellectual property. People cannot go anywhere else to get rooted. Milan works with parents. She helps overweight parents and she helps them take them through a plant-based lifestyle so their kids can avoid chronic disease, right? She created that process in our Business Accelerator, right? Intellectual property is a game changer. And so some of you already have it, but you're not leveraging it. And then others of you just haven't created it because, you maybe have never understood the value of taking your own ideas and packaging them for other people to consume. So I know I went kind of long today, but I was super excited to talk about this because I just don't think people understand the value that they have when you have ideas and you have frameworks or you have receipts and you haven't taken those receipts and turned them into anything. It's invaluable. So you got to have intellectual property. Let me see. Malika Love. Come on, Malika Love on Instagram said, how long does it take to complete the Business Accelerator program? My Business Accelerator is 1 year. 1 year. So you're with me a minimum of a year. If I'm being completely honest, the overwhelming majority of our students are with us 2 years or longer, though. Their choice, though. They decide to stay another year or two. So you're with us a minimum of a year. So yeah, because that's a great question because I like to create really well thought out intellectual property. So my program is not 90 days. Like, it's just like, you just can't create a fire curriculum in 90 days with the way I teach it. And so if I'm being honest, Malika, like I have went back and forth. Like, should I shorten my Business Accelerator? Because people are I want to get to it quick. Like, when do I get to that part? When do I get to that part? And I'm like, no, out of integrity, I just can't shorten the program. This is how long it takes. And it needs to take as long as it takes. And so you're with us for a minimum of a year in my Business Accelerator, right? And so that is how long it takes. And I'll tell you this, I recently got a couple of opportunities based on the intellectual property I created, right? One person reached out to me like, hey, we want you to come in. We want you to run this whole division. We want you to do this because based on what I've watched you do over the years, he said, you've already created this. We want you to bring your program into our institution and teach it. So he didn't say, I want Lisa. He said, we want your program. That's what I want. Now, some of us, if we got issues with our ego, we want them to want us. We want to be the superstar. But baby, the superstar gets burnt out. So what you really want to have is you want to have programming. You want to have books. You want to have curriculums. You want to have frameworks that they want to buy. And that way you may or may not be available for the opportunity. But guess what always is available for the opportunity? Yo, intellectual property, right? Okay. So that's what you want. So he's like, you already created this. He's like, we want to give this to our audience. We want you to come in and bring your program in, right? So your intellectual property is limitless. And here's why it's such an asset, just like any other asset. It continues to accrue value over time. See, we all know, for example, like buying a car is a depreciating asset. The minute you drive it off the lot, it loses value. Intellectual property is the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite. The moment you create the intellectual property and the time starts ticking, it is appreciating in value as long as you honor it. So that means like, the more you use it, the more it gets better, right? The more you can add things onto it to make it better. The more you sell it, the more people that consume it, the better it becomes, right? So your intellectual property appreciates in value. The more I teach our farm to table curriculum and make the little tweaks and deliver it better each time, the better it gets. The more I teach our Business Accelerator curriculum, the better it gets. Matter of fact, I was just yesterday writing down all of the refinements I'm about to make to our business accelerator curriculum. I'm like, nope, we about to do this. It's about to be crazy. 2025, crazy, right? And so it gets better. The more you guys watch me and listen to me, right? Every masterclass that I teach, I swear to God, every time I teach a masterclass and I have a student or a friend who was in the masterclass, every single time somebody says, no, this was your best one. a client just did that to me from the Chronic Stress Masterclass. She was like, that's the best I've ever seen you. Now, mind you, I've been on fire for a minute, right? But every time somebody says, this was fire, this was the best, right? So my delivery, it appreciates. And so it's just really important to understand that by the real definition of the word asset, intellectual property is an asset. It appreciates in value. The more you create, the longer you hold on to it, the more you use it. It has value in the absence of you, super important. So you don't have to be there for it to generate money. You don't have to be there for it to increase your net worth, right? And if you follow the kind of framework I taught you today with making sure it's built on receipts, make sure it's built on experience, making sure you've already made an observation. So you identified a problem that you want to solve in the world and you create intellectual property around solving that problem. Just get ready. And my best friend like to say, make sure you go buy a helmet because the blessings is about to be falling from the sky, okay? It will do wonders for your life. And I don't care if you're 9 to 5 or you're an entrepreneur, and everybody should have intellectual property because we all have experience or receipts in something. Maybe you're experienced at marriage. Maybe you're experienced in the health journey. Maybe you're experienced in finances. Maybe you're experienced in the faith. Like my coach, E.T., he the closest to God I've probably ever seen. Like his faith game is insane, like off the charts. He has helped me get closer to God because of his mastery around having a relationship with God. So I don't care what area your experience is in. It is packageable. It is marketable. Okay. It is all you have to do is be willing to commit to sit down and think. You got to do some thinking. You have to be still long enough to take the ideas out of your head and put them in the format that other people can easily consume. That's the hard part. It does take work. The build out is the hard part, but once it's built out, it's a game changer. It's a game changer. So that's why we make sure our clients are with us a minimum of a year because the build out takes time. And they all say, whoa, this is an undertaking. You're doggone right. But watch how much it's going to produce for you once it's completed. Right? So it's worth it. Okay. That was officially an hour. Okay. So I'm going to go eat now and take a nap. I hope this was helpful. That is the one asset that everybody should have, no matter where they are in their profession and in their career. If you guys want to check out some of my assets, lisaangelsmith.com is the best way to find out how you can work with us, learn about our coaching programs, or working with me one-on-one in a private coaching experience. And until next time, I will see you guys next Monday. Bye, y'all. You tuned in today because, like me, you refuse to let your good become the enemy of your great. You're not settling for good health when optimal is well within reach. If you're ready to go from good to great, visit lisaangelsmith.com to learn more about our plant-based health coaching program, Farm to Table, and our plant-based business accelerator and coaching certification. But before you go, if you enjoyed what you heard today, please consider rating and reviewing this podcast. Until next time, remember, radical obedience is still undefeated. Stay obedient.